So about 6 months ago, I started working overnight at Lowe's. Now, I really like this job. I get to listen to my podcasts and audiobooks. The people I work with are pretty laid back. I work by myself for the most part. And most importantly, I hardly have to deal with the customers. And if you ever worked in retail, you know how important that really is. While I do enjoy working there, over the past 6 months, I've seen some really crazy things. It started off small and not really a lot. The first thing I saw happen, I originally thought it was just some kind of glitch. See, in the Lowe's I work at, there are 2 bathrooms set up for the employees in the back corners of the store. When I first started working there, I didn't know what they were because they were just marked employees only. But I quickly found out after I had walked the length of the store to find a bathroom which another employee had told me where it was. But of course I walked right by it. Anyway, back on point. In these bathrooms, the lights works on a motion sensor. You know, the types. Well, as I was walking past, I could see the light come on from under the door. I thought it was a bit weird because there were only 2 other people in the store and I knew where they were. I went up and knocked on the door. There was with no answer, so I opened it and it was completely empty. Like I said, it wasn't much, so I really didn't think it. The next thing that happened was small as well. If you ever been to Lowe's, you might have noticed some of the more expensive items having a little green thing attached to them. We call them turtles, and they're our alarms. If someone tries to steal something with a turtle on them, once they go through the doors, they start letting out a high-pitched noise which is very hard to ignore. I was stalking some caulking, listening to the Adam Carolla podcast when I started hearing an alarm go off. It confused me, so I went looking for it. It took a little bit, but I finally found where it was coming from. It was a drill that was sitting on the ground and not right up front either. It was buried about 4 drills deep and under another display. As I was pulling the drills out to get to the one that had the turtle going off, another one next to me started going off. I will tell you that I nearly jumped out of my skin. I radioed my manger, Mike, and told him about it, and he said that it's okay. Those things go off all the time. What was weird was at the exact time Mike told me that, both turtles shut off. I chalked it up to coincidence and nothing more. Oh, how naive I was. Nothing else seemed to happen for about 2 weeks, and I had put those instances long behind me. I mean, why wouldn't I? Faulty sensor and sensitive turtles sounded likely to me. Correction was not one to just jump to the supernatural explanation. To put it mildly, I wasn't a believer. Oh, sure, I wished there were things that went bump in the night. I'm a longtime fan of supernatural and shows like Ghost Hunters, and I always watched Josh Gates. Man, I wish I had that man's life. If I can ever catch him on, but I never experienced anything myself. That was until about a month after working at Lowe's. It had started just like any night. Went in around 7, clocked in, and started unloading the truck. It was about 9:30 by the time we were done, and everyone else had left the store, so it was just us 3 of the night crew. For the most part, it was a pretty normal night. I was listening to a newly downloaded audiobook by Mark Tufo working on the 3rd cart by this time. It was close to about 2 a.m. and I was working my way down towards electrical to restock some fuses when I saw it. Honestly, I just kind of stood there more about a minute or 2 trying to make heads or tail on what I was seeing. Because a little bit over halfway down the aisle, there was an arm sticking out from under the shelving racks. It kept moving around as if someone was reaching under their couch to look for the lost remote. Once I got at least some of my wits back, I called Mike. "Mike," I said. "Yeah, what's up?" Mike called back. Mike, I got, an arm," I tried to say. "Oh, that thing?" Mike said, surprisingly unsurprised. "Yeah, don't worry about it. Just don't get too close. It tends to get a bit grabby. It's fast, and its reach is farther than it looks. So just stay away from that aisle for now." I was actually flabbergasted at how lightly Mike was taking it. "Ah," I said, not really knowing what else to say. "What aisle is it in, by the way?" Mike asked.
"Aisle 13. Okay, just steer clear of it for now. I'll explain more later on. What I have come to understand is that no one really knows anything about the arm. It shows up, tries to grab things and pull them under the shelving. That's about it. I've seen it about 7 times now. Never in the same aisle either, and it never shows up at the same time. The only thing it seems to be constant is that, has it always gone back under the shelving just before 4 a.m.? One time when I saw it though, I chucked a can of spray paint at it. The moment that can hit the aisle floor, the arm shot out and snatched it and sucked it back under the shelving. And when I say it shot out, I mean it shot out. It must have reached 3 times the length of a normal arm and back under the shelving in less than a second. After I saw that, I followed Mike's suggestion and just avoided those aisles that it was in until it went back under itself. That's all the time I got right now. I have a lot more stories if you want to hear them. Like the thing that lives in the garden center and the naked little man I keep seeing. That one's a bit weirder than others. If you want me to tell you more, just let me know and I'll try to write some more down. Wow, I never expected the kind of response that I gotten. Thanks to everyone that wants to hear more of my stories. And I do have a bunch. First, let me address a few questions about the arm from my first post. The arm looks like a man's arm, no sleeves or tattoos of any sort, though I can see that it has darkish hair on the forearm. I did notice one thing that seemed odd. It was missing its fingernail on its pinky finger. Come on, guys, it's almost 2020. I've already tried to take a picture of the arm. I mean, how could I not? It's a random arm reaching out from under a shelving unit. Well, I've got some bad news for anyone wanting to see the arm. It doesn't photograph well, as in, not as all. Whenever I tried to use my camera on my phone, nothing ever shows up. I tried to film it once, snatching something like it did the spray can. Son of a bitch just ignored it. That was until I stopped filming then. It grabbed it. That really had me worried when it did that, because that means that whatever the arm is attached to can think. I told Mike about not being about to film the arm and he wasn't surprised. He told me it doesn't show up on our security cameras either. He said he tried to let Day Shift know about it once, and of course they don't believe him because there was nothing on the cameras. I kept pushing Mike on the arm and he finally did tell me that, yes, it did grab someone once. When I tried to get him to spill the beans on what happened, he just told me to make sure that it doesn't grab me. After that, he wouldn't say any more about it, and told me to stop asking. I could tell that talking about it was really upsetting him, so I'm just going to leave 2 alone for a while. Okay, I hope that helps some with their questions. I'll try to answer when I can. With me working 10-hour shifts, I tend to do only 2 things, work and sleep. Because of my hours, I was curious about how much I'm walking now at work, so I downloaded a step counter on my phone. I can say I was a bit shocked to see I'm walking about 1,200 steps a day. No wonder my feet always hurt. Anyway, no one is here to listen about me getting my steps in for the day. You guys want more stories? And I already hinted at 2 in my last post, so I'll start with the thing that lives in the garden center. Alright, as anyone that has ever seen a Lowe's knows that they all have a garden center, where they keep their mulch, stones, and pretty much anything you might need plant or garden-wise. Right now it's filled with Christmas trees, big and small, as well as other Christmas-related plants. During the day, it's a pretty nice place and feels very Christmassy. Anyway, at night with the lights off, it can feel a bit spooky. No one in receiving likes to stock the garden center, so we take turns. Now the question arises, why don't we like to stock the garden center? You can look back to the aforementioned thing that lives in the garden center. Someone from my last post suggested that it might be a garden gnome, and in all honesty, it might be. None of us has ever seen in, and from what Mike has told me, no one ever has. So how do we know it's there? Easy. We hear it and feel it. We hear it because the damn thing is always moving about. We can hear it scampering on the roof, on top the racks, and in the ceiling scaffoldings. We can hear its feet slap the concrete as it runs through the aisles, always just out of view, or you see its movement just out of the corner of your eye. That's not even the worst part of it.
The damn thing is always laughing when you walk into the garden center. Now, I don't mean like a full belly laugh or an evil maniacal laugh, but more like a snicker or a hushed giggle. You know the type, where you know a joke or just something funny about someone, but you want to try to keep it quiet. Yeah, that kind of laugh. It starts up as soon as you walk through the doors and doesn't stop till you leave. And wherever you go, its laughter is always behind you or beside you. Sometimes it sounds like whatever it is right behind you, close enough that you should be able to feel its breath. But if you turn around, there's never anything there. Other times it sounds like it's coming from the other side of the garden center, and it's those times you have to look out for. Why? It's so far away? Yes, it is. But that's when it chucks shit at you. Yeah, the little fucker likes to throw rocks or rubber parts and whatever it can get its hand on and lobs it at you. Luckily, it's a pretty bad aim, but if it does hit you, then it really starts to giggle. Telling it to stop doesn't help either. It's like when a kid tries to tell a bully to stop picking on him. All it does is make the bully double down, and that's pretty much what happens with the thing in the garden center. Best we can do is just ignore it. Still, damn thing is unsettling as hell. The second thing I hinted at was the naked little man. Now this motherfucker pisses me off to no end. As I'm thinking about it, maybe this is what the person said might be a garden gnome, but I really don't think so. First off, it's completely hairless, and by that, I mean a bowling ball has more hair than this thing. I've only really seen it a few times fully. Most of the time I see its little fat ass running around the end of an aisle or scampering over the top of one. It can move pretty damn fast. I'll try to explain it so you can get a better understanding of. The thing is only about a foot, maybe a foot and a half tall, completely hairless, like I said before, fat and squat looking. Imagine a nude, hairless Danny DeVito without genitals, and you would be spot on. Yeah, I said without genitals. Thank God for the small favors. The only reason I call it a man is because it has absolutely zero traits of a woman. We actually started calling it Danny once I pointed to the resemblance. Anyway, this little bastard is more of a nuisance than it is anything else. It likes to make messes, knock stuff off the top of the racks, and steal your shit, that kind of stuff. Always makes your night a living hell because of all the extra work he forces us to do. Recently, while we were all taking our lunch break, we heard a lot of banging of a lot of stuff falling. We all ran to where we heard it. If you ever been to Lowe's around Christmas, you know that we display those tacky-ass blow-up lawn ornaments on the top of the racks close to the entrance. Well, that little fucker knocked one off, but wait, there's more. See, we don't just sit them up there. We tie those things down so they can't fall on the customers. But this little fucker had untied them all, then tied them together. So when he pushed one off, they all went. Let it be said, we all were quite pissed that night. Danny only comes out about 2 to 3 times a month, but I've lost about 5 box cutters to him. We have no idea where he came from or where he goes. He's not like the thing in the garden center, though. He doesn't laugh or giggle or even throw stuff. Danny is pretty quiet except when it runs or climbs. His bare feet slap the concrete, and he always sounds out of breath, but only when he's the move. Once he stops, he goes dead quiet. One time, the little bastard swiped my box cutter and took off. Luckily, I had just came out of the aisle to see him grab it. I took off after him, swearing if I catch him, I'm going to punt him like a fat, bald football. As I ran around the corner and had to stop fast, that pudgy bastard had set me up. Danny had dropped my cutter, but this aisle had the arm in it. See my first stories. And it was stretched disturbingly so as it was trying to grab my cutter, which was literally just outside its fingertips. If I hadn't come to a stop when I did, I would have been in, well, arm's reach of it. I looked up to see Danny looking down at me from the top of the rack. Oh yeah, I cussed him out, but all he did was watch me with those beady little eyes of his until he just ducked away and I hear him scamper off. I don't know if Danny was trying to hurt me or not, but I'm putting a chain on my box cutter from now on, and I don't think I'll be chasing him anymore. That's all I have time for tonight. I have more stories if you're still interested. Let me know. Maybe I'll tell you about the man that watches the store, or the fact that I think the store itself doesn't like me. Okay guys, holy shit, this fucking week! Boy, I got a lot to tell you. But before I get into it, everyone seems to want to know about the man that watches the store, or as someone else called him, the Watcher, which is what we started calling him just because it's very fitting. I noticed the Watcher about a month ago. I was outside stalking the garden center. Yes, that little bastard was running around giggling at me. Read part 2. I tell you I can't wait till summer when I can try to stalk the garden canter before sunset, so I won't have to deal with it. Right now I don't have much of a choice with the sun, deciding that a good time to set is at 4 p.m. Hell, my grandmother stays up later than the sun. I wish we would just get rid of this stupid daylight saving time. I mean, yes, it made sense when we used candles and electricity was being used by Edison to electrocute elephants. But Christ, do we really need it now? Anyway, while I was outside, I was over by the register area, putting away some large vases when I glanced out into the parking lot. It was there at the far edge of the lot, just outside the reach of the lights, was a very tall and very large man. He was wearing what looked like a long, dark trench coat with a wide brim hat, kind of like Reverend Kane's hat from Poltergeist 2. You know the guy, the only real creepy thing about that movie? Except that this hat's brim was really wide, like almost out to his shoulders wide. The collar on the trench coat also was popped, so his face was completely shrouded in darkness. To say that I was just a bit creeped out would be like saying Greta Thunberg only cares a little about the environment. I went to Mike about it back then, and he just sighed with frustration. Don't worry, it wasn't at me. He told me that this guy shows up every year around the end of September, beginning of November, and just stand out there watching the store and tends to finally go away around the end of March. Mike told me that every night around 10 p.m. he'll show up somewhere just outside the property line, stand there all night, rain, snow, sleet, doesn't matter. And then he tends to disappear around 5 a.m. I asked him how many years has he been doing this, and Mike told me that from the stories he's heard, pretty much since the store first opened back in 2006. Has anyone ever tried to see what he wants? I asked Mike. Mike looked at me sadly. Yes, he said. Mike told me that a few years ago, a young guy, one of those I ain't scared of shit types, decided to go and tell the creep off. He was never heard from again. The cops were called and a missing persons report was made, but the guy was never seen again and the watcher disappeared for the rest of the year. And next, that was until November when he once again showed up. I was like, fuck Mike. Is there anything else that might pop up that I should know about that could, I don't know, cost me my life? At that point, Mike informed me that come spring, I should be on the lookout of an incredibly attractive woman that starts showing up and tries to lure you out of the store to have sex with you. Yeah, you guessed it. She doesn't want to have sex with you, and I'm not supposed to believe anything she says or does, and that it's best to simply ignore her. I told Mike that if a hot girl was trying to have sex with me, then I would already not trust her, because that shit does not happen. And I mean ever. I haven't had a woman look at me like that for over 10 years, and I'm counting my wife in that. Alright, now let me tell you how my week went. The first really fucked up thing that happened was last Wednesday. Shit got real scary and real serious that night. Let me set it up here. I was working a unique shift on Wednesday due to Lowe's being closed for Thanksgiving. See, unlike other greedy big box stores, Lowe's actually cares about their employees and as such does not open late night on Thursday to sell items that's been markets up then, markets down, so idiots feel that they need to get into fistfights over sheets. Oh yeah, I really saw that once on a Black Friday. Let me ask you something. Is there or was there any point in your life that you wanted to buy sheets at a falsely discounted price, so fucking bad that you would punch a complete stranger in the face? If your answer is anything other than, of course not, what do you think I am? Stupid? Then you really need to rethink your love for sheets. As I was saying, I was working the unique shift of 1 p.m. to 12 a.m. We were all supposed to be clocked out by midnight, and I was fine with that. The majority of the night was pretty easy. I mean, besides having to deal with customers, but even they seemed to be all right for the most part. It wasn't until 11 that it went south. I don't know how much longer I'm going to last at Lowe's anymore. Someone said in the comments that it sounds like things might be escalating, and I think they might be right. I think things are starting to get out of hand. It started on Wednesday. It was my turn to stock the garden center. I was out there stocking the mulch, because there's no time to work on your garden then in December in the Northeast. Prime weather. No lie. We get some crazy things in right now. Just the other day we got 2 pallets of weed whackers. I mean, why? It wasn't even for Black Friday, but that isn't the point. I was out in the garden center, like I said, stocking mulch and trying to ignore the thing in the garden center laughing at me when it abruptly stops. I look up into the rafters as I hear it scamper up over onto the roof. Confused by the sudden change, I walked out into the open section of the center trying to see where it scampered off to, when I heard really heavy breathing. I looked over towards the sound to see the watcher standing on the other side of the fence. I stopped dead. I've never seen the watcher this close up, and apparently the only one who ever has was never seen again. He has never approached the store before, But there he was, staring at me. I can tell he was staring at me because, while his face was still hidden in the shadows of his high collar and hat, I can see light gleaming off his cold, hateful eyes. Now, I don't scare easily. Spooked and unnerved, yes. But scared? No. I will tell you what, though. While I was frozen where I stood looking at this tall tower of evil, and evil is what this thing was, that if I hadn't already dropped a loaf earlier, then my pants would have been a bakery. Never before had I ever felt such a presence. I could feel my heart pounding so fast that I thought it would explode out of my chest, but at the same time I felt as though lungs refused to work, as if my breath wouldn't leave me, as to not be in the same space as the Watcher. Somehow I was able to get my foot to move as I took a slow step backwards. Then he moved. Not much, mind you. He just grabbed the fence, but it was fast. So fast that I didn't even see him do it. One moment his hand was next to him. Then bam! He had his fingers wrapped around the chain. The movement and noise made me nearly jump out of my shoes. I almost bolted right then and there, but his hand caught my attention and held it for a second more. At first I thought he was wearing gloves, but then I noticed the long gray fingernails. His skin matched his nails, except it was darker gray. I could also see that he was squeezing the fence. Let me just say that if anyone that has ever drove by a Lowe's understands that there is tall fence that enclosed the garden center and that it's made out of pretty sturdy chain link. I mean, yes, you could cut it with a fence cutter, but that's what they're made for anyway. Well, the Watcher had his fingers through the chain link holes, and as he was squeezing, he was bending the metal. I could actually hear the metal protesting against his strength. Well, as Biff Tannen said, I made like a tree and got out of there. I bolted for the entrance, closed the doors behind me, and locked them. I called Mike and had him meet me in the back office. I told him what happened. He said that he's never heard of the Watcher even doing anything like that. Fuck, Mike said. He's never even set foot on the property that I know of. We left the door locked and closed till it was closer to 6 when Mike had to open the doors. He told me he went to check out where I saw the Watcher. He said it was gone, but he could see where he had twisted the fence up. The next thing to happen was on Friday night. It wasn't much, but somehow I think that it might be a lot more important than it seems. I was going to take my lunch break, and I had stepped into the elevator. Now I know that it's a pretty quick walk up the stairs to the break room and offices, but my feet usually start to hurt around that my break time, and of course I'm just lazy. I do take the stairs down all the time, though. I feel that it's a waste to take the elevator downstairs, because I at least have gravity on my side at that point. Plus, it's a lot faster to just run down a floor. Anyhow, I got onto the elevator and I was going to press the second floor button when I had to stop and stare. Where there was normally 2 buttons, but now there were 3. This new button wasn't marked, but I could tell that it was very old and worn. "What's that?" John asked when he saw something in the liquid. It looked like one of our name tags. Mike took out a pen and flipped it over to see the name. Trevor Mike stood up fast when he saw that name. "No," he whispered. "I can't be." "Can't be what?" I asked. "Trevor," Mike explained, "was the name of the man that the arm had grabbed." Well, fuck me, right? Like I said, I don't know how much longer I'm going to stick around here. When you almost shit yourself twice in the same week, it really makes you think about your life choices. I'm going to stick around for now, but I already told Mike that if I even see self-moving skin again, I'm just going to walk out the doors and not look back. A person has to have limits, and I think I might be at mine. That's it for now. I'll keep you updated if anything new happens or if I quit, and remember, have a Lowe safe day. Sorry. Yeah, I know it's been a while. Thanks for bearing with me. It's tough to write during the holiday seasons with having 2 kids, but I did promise people that I would write about the going-on-is at my store. And after such a long time since I last wrote, a lot of shit has happened. Let me just start by saying that so far no one has died. So there's that at least. The crazy activity, though, has increased, and new things have been popping up. One of the creepiest newbie is the girl in the trash compactor. The first time I saw her, my heart almost stopped. It was the end of the day, or should I say night, considering it was 5 in the morning. I was throwing the trash away through the chute when I heard a soft sound. couldn't make it out at first. It was just too soft. And then I heard it just a bit louder. It was a voice, a young girl's voice, and it was coming from the other side of the chute. Hello? I had said with, let's say, a little bit of apprehension. There was a rustling, and I can see some garbage moving around as a delicate gray hand reached up and grabbed the other edge of the chute. Then another gray hand appeared. In between them, the top and a head started to rise. It had thin, dirty blonde hair. It looked wet with some kind of nasty all over it. And as the head rose higher, two dead, angry pale eyes peeked up over the edge of the chute's edge. I quickly closed and locked the chute. Try not to empty the trash anymore. Another new thing is the bird. Now, if you've been in a Lowe's, then there might have been a chance that you've seen a bird or two flying around. I really don't blame them, honestly. It's warm. There are many places to hide, free of predators, for the most part. And of course, there's plenty of bird food. What we have, though, isn't really a bird per se. I mean, we call it the bird. But it's not really a bird. It can fly. It has wings. It has a beak and feathers. But it also has other things as well. It has these spider-like legs that it uses to climb along walls and the ceiling when it's not zooming around. I one time saw it to spin a web in the corner of the store. It caught another bird which it ate, and I wish to God I didn't see that. It caught the bird, jabbed it with its two front legs, and its head split open, showing multiple wiggling things which it inserted into the flapping little bird. I watch in horror as the bird seemed to deflate and then melt. I had to turn away and swallow a verp. Now, you may not know what a verp is, but I damn near guarantee you that you've done it. Let me explain it simply. Vomit plus burp equals sign verp. So yeah, after I saw that thing eat, I had to swallow that little bit of partially digested nastiness. Not a good night. Then there was the night that the power went off. This caused me some undue nightmares. But, you might say, it's just a power outage. Anywhere else I would agree with you, but have you ever been in a bog box store during a power outage? It's creepy, like it's almost an act against nature for those kinds of stores to be without power. Well, this, unlike anywhere else, is my Lowe's. And of course, when the power went out, the strangeness started. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Steve did find his phone later on, but it was cracked and actually smoking. Believe it or not, though, that's not even the worst part. Turned out that Steve was cheating on his girlfriend with, I kid you not, his ex-wife, and Danny had forwarded all of their texts to Steve's girlfriend. It was not pretty. Steve had no idea how Danny cracked his phone. I guess that he didn't. He probably knew the password. Steve's phone wasn't one with a touch or face lock. It was just a simple code, and I figured that Danny has been watching us for a while, and since he likes to hang out on the top of the racks, he probably saw all of us punch in our codes one time or another, so that's something to really think about. So now Steve is actively trying to hunt and kill Danny for ruining his life. As much as Danny annoys me, I don't believe that it's his fault. Well, not entirely. I mean, it's not Danny's fault that Steve was cheating, and it's not Danny's fault that Steve was too stupid to not delete those texts. When I pointed this out to Steve, he just told me to shut up and stormed off. The arm hasn't been seen for a while, and I'm not too upset about it. I hate that creepy thing, and it can just stay away. But with things seemingly escalating, I'm sure we'll be seeing it again sooner than later. The new elevator button is showing up more. It's like it wants me to press it. Oh, I'm not even about to. With the way things are right now, who the hell knows where it would go, and as far as I'm concerned, I'm sure as fuck not going to find out. I think that's just about it for now. With the holidays over, I hope to write more, but something tells me that things are going to come to a head soon. Mike told me that he's only seen the kind of activities that we're having now only once before, when he first started. When I asked him what happened last time he took off his hat, just shook his head. If, and I mean if, it comes to a head like last time, Mike said, one or more of us might not make it out, but that's the extreme end. I'm sure it won't come to that. Damn it, Mike. Could you be more ominous? I swear if it wasn't for the pay I make, I think that I should quit or transfer. But recently I found out that my wife works with a woman whose husband works at another Lowe's in the area, and found out that I get paid a lot, and I mean a lot, more than he does. This tells me that maybe someone in management, or maybe even higher up, might know what's going on at night here. And if that's true, why is it such a secret? And why does day shift seem to not believe us about what happens when we tell them? Maybe I'm overthinking it, but something just really seems off. Anyway, I'm out and heading to bed. Have a lose safe day. Well, our manager dropped in this week, and I must say things got a bit ominous. But before I go into that, let me tell you guys about some more weird shit that went down this week. It started out with the bathroom. I was in there doing, well, my business, surfing the net, when I heard something. At first I thought I was just imagining it, but then I heard it again. It was a soft giggle. I, of course, finished up and pulled up my pants. I walked around the small bathroom trying to locate the giggle, and after a brief moment I was able to locate that the sound was coming out of the drain. I got down and put my ear to the drain. I could hear the giggle better now. It sounded like a kid's giggle, specifically a little girl's giggle. I looked down the drain, but all I could see was blackness. I pulled out my phone, turned on its light, and I shined it down the drain. I saw something, but I couldn't quite make it out until it moved. An eye opened up and looked up at me. "Hi," it whispered. "I know thank you out of that bathroom, and I don't care how friendly that drain eyeball seemed to be. I was not using that bathroom again. I just hope it can't travel through the drains, that's all I fucking need." Now remember back in my first post when I mentioned the devices we call turtles that we use for theft prevention, and how a couple of them went off for no reason? Well, about 4 days ago, around 3 a.m. in the morning, every single one of them started chiming at exactly the same moment. And as they chimed the music over the intercoms, Top 40's shit stopped playing and was replaced by a deep, croaking voice speaking a language that none of us could even come close to understanding or even guessing what it was. I mean, it literally sounded completely inhuman. The turtles chimed and the voice spoke, for a lack of a better term, for about a minute, and as quickly as they started, they all just stopped. Not much else happened for the rest night, but it definitely threw us off our groove. This next thing actually made me smile a bit when I saw it. He looked at me slightly confused. "What?" he asked. "Elefino," I told him. "Let's just see what he wants." As we approached the sliding doors, we could see Steve standing out on the open section of the garden center. "Hey," said John, "it's snowing." That it was, heavily too. We could see it accumulating as we watched. Mike walked up next to us. "Is that lighting, and what the hell is he looking at?" Mike commented. That's when I noticed a few more things. Steve was looking straight up at the snowy night sky as what looked like green lighting lit up the garden center. How did I not notice that before? We slid the doors open and walked out. As we approached Steve, all of our eyes looked up, and we all came to a stop. "Dear God," whispered John in horrified awe. Above us there was a blizzard roaring unlike anything we've ever seen before. The clouds lit up with dark, green lighting, but that really wasn't anything compared to what else there was. Silhouetted within the clouds of the storm, showed only when the lighting flashed. There was something large. No, not large. That's not the right word for it. It was something enormous, so big that it filled every inch of the cloud and lighting-covered sky. It looked like long, slow-moving cords or tentacles covering from horizon to horizon. Oh, and when I said roaring before I meant it, the sky was literally roaring. "John," I said, "call your wife. See if she can see this." John pulled out his phone and called his wife. I knew that she was a night owl and we had a good chance that she might still be up. I, myself, took out my own phone and pointed up towards the sky to see if I can get a video of this madness that we were witnessing. And of course, all I could see on my camera was falling snow. John hangs up his phone. "Well?" asked Steve. "She can't see anything," John said as he tucked his phone back into his pocket. "Well, that can't be good," someone else said. We all jumped a foot at the new voice behind us. We spun around to see Todd, our manager, looking up with his hands behind his back. "Todd," Mike said, "when did you get here?" Todd looked away from the sky and to Mike. "Just now. Can I speak to you, Mike?" "Of course," Mike said. Todd turned to us. All right, everyone, he said. I know it's weird, but I need everyone to get back to your jobs for now. But, I said, pointing up, the sky monster? Yes, yes, Todd said, waving me away. I'm well aware. Just please go back to what you were doing. I'll talk to you all in a moment. We all looked up once, then started in. Wait, Todd said. Stay away from Tool World. There was something squishy over there. Well, I can give a guess what or who. That was so we all headed in, and I went back to try to finish doors. It wasn't very long, though, before Todd showed up. Can I speak to you? You know, I just realized that in all my posts I never told you guys my name. It's probably for the best, to be honest, so I'll use Trent for now. Can I speak to you, Trent? Todd asked. I pulled my gloves off. Sure, I said. You've seen it, haven't you? You gotta narrow that down a bit, boss man. The button? Oh, I said. Yeah, I've seen it. And you haven't pressed it? Why would I? Todd shrugged. Curiosity? I'm not that curious. Todd sighs and rubs the bridge of his nose. Listen, the store has chosen you. Chosen me? Yes, and you need to press the button. Why? Because if you don't, then things are going to keep escalating until... Until what? Until they don't stop, and then it'll be too late. Too late for what? Todd just looks at me with a sad face. That's up to you. Press the button, Trent, and do the right thing. Todd turns and walks away. Well, what the actual fuck, Todd? Do the right thing? Last time I checked, this wasn't a Spike Lee joint. What am I supposed to do with that? The store has chosen me? For what? Why? Why me? Okay, this job has just gotten a lot worse and a whole lot more intense. I have absolutely no idea what I should do. If anyone has any suggestions, I am more than open and willing to hear them. And so I guess until I can figure stuff out, everyone try to have a lose-safe day. I tried not to look at the gory messes as I ran past, but I could hear it. The wet ripping, the squishy plops, and the hard snapping, dear God, as if I already didn't have enough nightmare fuel in the tank. I ran up to aisle 31, our middle aisle, and it was clear of arms. I'd just taken my first steps to run when the garden center's doors exploded. I ducked, almost falling in shock. I looked behind me as the watcher stepped into the store. His eyes focused down on me as he reached out towards me. I was frozen to the spot. I had to move, I had to run, but my fucking feet weren't listening. Fucker! Both the watcher and I turned our heads to see John run up and smash a 10-pound sledgehammer into the head of the watcher. The watcher spun and fell to one knee, dazed. John looked at me. Go, he said. I got Big Bad here. You sure? I said with more shake in my voice than I care to admit. The watcher started to stand, but John roared and overhead slammed the sledge into the watcher's back, sanding him to the floor. John winked. This old Marine's got your back, son. I nodded and took off down the aisle. I reached aisle 1 and had to skid to a stop when the unthinkable happens. The roof over by cabinets groaned and buckled as a large, fat, segmented tentacle bathed in dark green light broke through and smashed into the ground, shattering all of the displays, sending rubble and wood chunks everywhere. This wasn't ever the whole damn tentacle. This was just part of it, like some weird, bendy elbow. Hey! I looked up aisle 1 to see Steve waving at me. Get your ass over here! He screamed. Well, I listened and bolted towards him. We have to get out of here. I whizzed at him, trying to catch my breath. Get some help. Can't, he said as he threw his thumb over his shoulder towards the doors. Doors won't open. Besides, I don't think there's anything out there. I looked behind him and out the doors. He was right. The doors were seamless, although it was just a solid piece. But it didn't matter because through the doors all I saw was the dark green light and enormous shadows. Fuck, I hissed, annoyed. What? Steve asked. I stood and ran to the elevator. Steve followed me. What are you doing? Steve asked. I pressed the elevator's call button. What I fucking have to, it seems. The door slid open and I stepped inside. Steve followed me. You don't have to, I said to him as I put my finger on the old worn button. There came another loud crash as another part of the roof, I think over my lumber, collapsed. "I'm not fucking staying out there," he said. I shrugged and pressed the button. The elevator doors close. There was a moment of nothing happening, then a jolt as we started to descend. "What do you think is down here?" Steve asked nervously. "What do you get when you cross an elephant with a rhino?" I asked him. He looked at me as a thin smile came to his lips. "Fuck you." He laughed. That brought a smile to my own, but then the doors opened. A hallway stood before us. A hallway made of old cinder blocks and rusty industrial lights that seem to work only part of the time, or whenever the fuck they feel like. "Come on," I said to Steve. "I don't think we have a lot of time." We took off down the hallway at a jog. Luckily, we didn't have to go far when the hallway opened up to a gigantic space. It was so large that we couldn't see the top nor the sides, and the only reason we could see anything was because, about 30 yards ahead of us, was a large open pit that dark green light and smoke issued out of. On the other side of the pit was a statue that stood easily 50 feet tall, give or take a foot. I really couldn't make out what the statue was supposed to look like, because I actually couldn't look at it. Every time I tried to, my head hurt like it was on fire and eyes burned and teared up. It was almost as if the thing was so alien to your world that my brain couldn't comprehend what it was. The only thing that I could tell was that it was big, and that it looked like it was moving. "What is wrong with that thing?" Steve asked. "I don't know," I said back, "but I think we have to get closer." "Why?" Steve asked, horrified. I didn't answer him this time. Instead, I kept my eyes away from the statue and jogged up to the pit. I stopped at the edge and looked over. It was like looking into... well, I honestly can't explain it. It was beyond anything of our world or imagination, and what I saw down that god-forsaken hole was so twisted and vile and foreign that made me spin away and vomited. I can only pray that my mind will one day erase that trauma, because if it doesn't, then my nightmare just became night terrors. Steve looked at me, both horrified and curious. He went to go look, but I grabbed his arm and just shook my head. I looked up at Steve with a, let's say, more than a little confused look. Steve shrugged. "Why?" I had to ask. "Because I can't let you do what you were planning on doing," he answered. "I have to," I said. "If I don't, everything will be destroyed." "Yes, I know," he finished. "We're counting on it." Okay, time for a little catch-up. When I was forced into looking at the statue, it showed me everything. A little more than I needed to know if I'm honest. For example, are you ever alone in a room and get a weird feeling like someone's watching you? Or you put something down only for it to disappear, then reappear later on? Well, just be grateful you don't know why that is, and no, I'm not telling you. It's bad enough that I'm forced to know. Wish I could just use the head key from Lock and Key and remove that horrid piece of information. Anyway, that statue told me what's going on, and this is where the real crazy starts. If you think my story was unbelievable before, then I'm really going to lose you now. Okay, here we go. And I'm letting you guys know that I seem to be losing most of what I was giving, as if I was trying to hold water, so a lot of what I'm saying is pretty much paraphrasing. Now, a couple millennia ago, an ancient, evil, vehement force was captured by powerful, yes, I know how this sounds, shamans, and trapped in a pocket realm to spend the rest of eternity. They placed great seals around the Earth at strategic locations that used the Earth's own energy. I think that some call them ley lines or something, as a generator to forever power the seals and keep the unnamed monstrosity trapped. Or that was the plan, at least. See, during World War II, a lot of the seals were cracked. Now, I got no proof, but I would bet dollars to donuts that the Nazis were involved with it. Near-apocalyptic disasters just kind of has their name written all over it. Anyway, one of those now cracked seals just happened to be under the first Lowe's. When the seal cracked, one of the statues called out to Carl Buchan, a part owner of Lowe's at the time, and explained the situation. It turned out that the creators of the seal anticipated the possible cracking and created the statues as a backup, just in case. Well, it let Buchan know where the other seals were and which ones were cracked and could possibly break, and it was now up to him to secure and fix those that broke. Kind of a lot of pressure to put on one man's shoulders, to be sure. With the statue's help and guidance, Buchan grew Lowe's through the 50s, placing all the new Lowes over other broken seals. After his heart attack in '61, his 5-man executive team, all of them handpicked, and knowing of the situation of the broken seals, continued Buchan's plans. The plan was working for the most part, but the problem was Lowe's wasn't getting everywhere it needed to go. So after much debate, the 5-man team decided to approach other growing companies and their CEOs to see if they could get them to help. And after showing them what was at stake, they actually got Sam Walton of Walmart and Ray Kroc of McDonald's on board with the plan. As capitalists, they had a strong interest in seeing that the world wasn't destroyed. Be bad for business and all that. Since 1941, there has been 14 cracked seals that have broken and been resealed. The one under my store is number 15. That was why all the strange shit was always happening. With the seal cracked under the store, otherworldly madness was slipping through. And now with the seal completely broken, all hell was pouring out. It was up to me to reseal it, but I had a limited amount of time to do that. How do I reseal it, you ask? Well, that's the choice part that everyone kept talking about. To reseal a broken seal, it takes one of the most powerful forces on Earth, a human soul that is giving up freely. See, that was why I was chosen. I was the only one that had something real to lose. I could walk away and save myself, but in doing so, I would be dooming all of mankind, including my wife and 2 young children. That was the choice, but for me, it wasn't a choice at all. That was until Steve shot my ass. "We've been waiting a long time for this," Steve said, "and I can't let you seal the gate when we're this close." I looked at him confused. "We?" A slight smile spread across Steve's face. "Home Depot, of course." "Home? What?" I said with even more confusion in my voice. The room rumbled. "Time's getting short," Steve said. "Long story short, Home Depot was founded by a coven with the sole purpose of finding an open gate and keeping it open so our true God can come forth and cleanse the world of the human infection. With you gone, the chosen can't chose, and the gate will stay open." He leveled the gun at me. "So, goodbye." I closed my eyes, waiting for the bang. They say you never hear the one that gets you, God. I hope that's true. Out of the blue was a bewildering, inhuman screech off towards the elevator. We both kind of stopped and looked over confused. "The hell?" Steve asked. Like a naked, hairless little blur, Danny came running out of the hallway. Steve's face went from confused to seriously pissed off. "You little fucker," Steve said through his gritted teeth. He turned the gun from me towards Danny and opened fire. Danny zigged and zagged like a fat, squat fly avoiding a swatter. He ran right up to Steve, and just as Steve's gun clicked empty, he jumped up and, Lord have mercy, bit down hard on Steve's crotch. Steve cried out his anguished pain. He dropped the gun and started punching his crotch, trying to pry Danny off his twig and berries. I stood up and watched the crazy scene playing out in front of me. Then an idea came to me, and I prayed to God that it would work. Despite the pain from the hole in my shoulder, I took off towards the screaming Steve and ran straight into him, knocking him off balance. He stumbled back, spun his arms trying to maintain his balance, but I could tell he was on the losing end of that battle. Danny lets go of Steve's snozberries as Steve totters on the side of the abyss. "I give this soul freely," I whispered as I ran up and pushed Steve one last time as he toppled and screamed as he fell over the edge and into the dark green hell. The whole cavern shook and rumbled as rocks from an unseen ceiling high above started to fall. I looked down at Danny. "Elevator," I said as we both started running. "Too bad I didn't make it there. I think a rock hit my head or something because there was a sharp pain from my head, and I completely blacked out. And when I woke, I was lying in a hospital bed with my wife sitting in a chair watching the news." "Honorable?" I asked weakly. My wife startled and jumped to my side. I asked her what happened and how I got here. She explained to me that while I was stalking, somehow a toilet fell from its stored location and on my head, which caused me to deadfall on a pickaxe. I'm not sure where she got that story from, but I think that it would be best if she kept believing that story. The rest of the day went by normally. I saw my kids and the rest of my family as they all swung by to say hi. The doctors come by to check on me and see how I'm doing. My wife brought me a foot-long meatball from Subway sandwich. My favorite overall, it was pretty nice. When visiting time was over, I went ahead and sent my wife home with the kids so she could get a decent night's sleep. That's when I got 2 more visitors. I just sat back and was getting comfortable when there was a knock on my door and 2 people came in. The first one was Todd, and second one I knew I recognized, but I couldn't put my finger on it. "Todd?" I asked with surprise. "Hey," Todd said. "Can we come in?" Sure," I said. Todd came in and motioned towards the man behind him. "This is Mr. Marvin Ellison, the CEO of Lowe's." I snapped my fingers. "I knew I recognized you from somewhere," I said. He came over and shook my hand. "Nice to meet you. We promised to make this quick." "Is this about what happened?" I asked. "Yes," Todd said, "and everything that entitles." "You are a hero, there's no doubt about that," Ellison said. "But..." I led. "But," continued Ellison, "what we have here is something unprecedented." "How?" I asked. "Well," Todd said, "you're still here. Up until now, the seal has always been sealed by a self-sacrifice. You sealed it with just a sacrifice." "To be honest," I said, "I didn't know if it would work or not." "Well," said Ellison, "so far it seems to have. That's why I'm here. I wanted to thank you in person, and..." He reached into his suit and pulled out an envelope and handed it me. "We would love to have you back working for us, but we also fully understand if you want to seek other life choices. As long as things keep under wraps, that it." "Mr. Ellison," I said, "who in hell would believe me about anything that happened? Shit, I lived through it, and I don't really believe it." Mr. Ellison smiled and nodded. Todd shook my hand. "I hope to see you again." "We'll see," I said back. "By the way, is Mike and John okay?" Todd smiled. "Everyone is fine," he said. "Even Danny." I smiled at that. Todd walked over and opened the door for Ellison. "Mr. Ellison," I said just before he went through the door. He turned back to me. "Yes?" "Steve," I explained. "He worked for Home Depot. I think they're out to get, well, everyone." "I'm well aware," Ellison said to me. "That's why I left them. Thank you for the info, though." He and Todd left and closed the door behind them. I opened the envelope and pulled out a very large check and a letter. The letter thanked me and told me to enjoy my life, and with the check, I think that the family and I will do just that. So, that's my crazy-ass story. Sorry it took so long to write. Life has been keeping me busy. I know how hard it is to believe, and I don't blame you if you don't. But thank you everyone that followed this insane ride and worried about me and the others. And always remember to have a lose safe day.